Here, the Monday, January 9th, 2023 meeting of the Marquette City Commission is now called to order at 6 p.m. Please rise and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, and City Clerk, if you could conduct a roll call for us.
Commissioner Bonzal. Here. Commissioner Hanley.
Here.
Commissioner Ottaway. Here. Commissioner Smith.
Here.
Commissioner Stonehouse. Here. Mayor Pro Tem Davis.
Here.
And Mayor.
Here. Thank you, City Clerk. Moving on to announcements. My bad. We're moving on to approval of the agenda. Commissioners, we currently have an agenda in front of us. Do we have any motions on the agenda? Commissioner Smith?
Your Honor, I would like to make a motion that we move item 9 under new business to after comments from the city manager and just prior to adjournment, because that will be a closed session where the members of the public are not able to attend for legal reasons.
Okay.
And approve the remainder of the agenda as written. Thank you, Pro Tem Davis.
Thank you, Commissioner Smith. Do we have a second on that motion? Commissioner Ottaway?
Second.
Is there any discussion?
No.
No.
Okay. All those in favor, please say yes.
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 All those opposed? Motion passes 7-0. All right. Which brings us on to our appointments and reappointments. We have one appointment this evening and one reappointment. Commissioners, do we have a motion on the appointment? Mayor Pro Tem Davis?
I move that we appoint Patricia Salo to the Downtown Development Authority for a term ending 1/1/27 and reappoint Ryan Stern to the Downtown Development Authority for a term ending 1/1/27.
Thank you. And do we have a second on that motion? Commissioner Ottaway?
Second.
Thank you. Is there any discussion?
Just thank you very much for serving. The DDA is a very important part of our community.
No comment.
Commissioner Hanley?
I would also like to thank everyone that is working on the boards. It is very nice to see people getting involved in the community, and I'm really excited to see what the DDA does going forward. So thanks so much for serving.
Anyone else? Okay. Seeing none, all those in favor, please say yes.
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 All those opposed? The appointment or reappointment both pass 7-0. All right, and that brings us to our first public comment session of the evening. Public comment may not exceed 3 minutes per person. Please state your name and physical address prior to your comment. And as a note for the public, if you're here to speak specifically regarding either of the public hearings, you will also have an opportunity to do so during those items. Thank you.
James Gallant, Marquette County Suicide Prevention Coalition, 538 Yelmer Road, Scandia, Michigan. And as we were discussing a little minute ago about your rules of procedure, that you simply just went and started all the working and discussing and debating without a motion pending again. Seems to be just the way it's going to be now. And I had a little, I don't know if this is your attorney or if this guy's an attorney, the guy who was making the presentation up there, but we had a little minute out in the hallway, and he was suggesting that he didn't think that I was right about the motion having to be first during a work session, except for, that's hence the name work session. It's Open Meetings Act. It was posted as you're working, deliberating towards a decision that, yes, this motion is pending. And I think this is the biggest problem, is we have these lawyers just standing around, like your lawyer sitting right here, which I believe is not properly instructing your client. That's just the manner in which they're performing their duties is all. That's what I'm saying. I think that it's just common practice just to let every next mayor, just however you want to run it, go ahead and run it like that. And I believe it just borders pandering. And that's how Ron Keefe earned his career for many, many years. And Ron Keefe is the one that, at the encouraging of John Kivala, determined that it is against the rules not to suspend a rule and have the no motion pending when you start discussion. That was determined. And All of a sudden, get another mayor, and, oh, I guess it goes away, and then starts again. And then the cycle starts again until somebody's gonna come around and do it differently. And so it's just like we just had now. We had a motion to move the agenda item, motion to amend the agenda before you had a motion to approve the agenda. Except the motion to amend is a secondary motion. So the motion to approve would be first, always. It's always a question, and it's always first. And notice, you're not questions. These aren't questions, right? It's again, former class Dow project status update. Procedure to fill, it's not a question anymore. Who wrote these? Who writes these? It's supposed to be a question. It's always supposed to be a question, and then you just motion. It's your duty and responsibility as a presiding officer to entertain a motion to approve as presented the next item on the agenda when it comes up. That's the way it works. And that's why I believe that the people are so hopeless in this community. And if the people in this community who believe in following the rules are going to step up at the ballot box and start recalling people that aren't doing it. And the new people, like Commissioner Stonehouse testified, that you discussed the tax rate increase for a year, yet you only made the motion 20 minutes before you did it at the meeting, and everybody was all like, hey, wait a minute, you didn't even know you were talking about it. No, nobody did know you were talking about it, because if you go back to the rules, it would be, it's 20 minutes to apologize for what you knew you were about to do, because you already had all the discussion. And it was very clear at the last meeting with Commissioner Davis, and it was a complete cluster. So please get back to following the rules. And
That's
thank
3
you very
minutes.
much.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else for public comment this evening?
Barb Outside, 1324 North Front. I'm here today representing myself and my neighbors who live on East Fair. I live right on the corner of Fair and Front Street. And I'm here to ask Public Works to scrutinize and consider their current plowing strategies as it in the context of public safety, speed, and pedestrian access. We all know speeding on East Fair has been an issue for a while. It's a popular thoroughfare, as you know, for kids, pedestrians, bikes, scooters, as people go to the skate park, the Y, the bus stop on the corner of Pine. The loss of the four-way stop at Pine and Fair is worse than the speeding issue, but I think this is kind of on the docket to be studied as the city works on its new master plan. As you're also probably aware, speed design has a lot to do with how that it either encourage drivers to speed, go fast or slow down based on perceived visual dangers. So when the coast is clear, people tend to go faster. And Fair is a good example of where people just naturally want to go fast because it's wide and unobstructed. Juxtaposed to 3rd Street where, you'd be nervous to go very fast down 3rd because of all the visual. Our complaint is with Public Works and their plowing strategy. Plowing usually occurs at night when they plow with what I will refer to as the dregs. The dregs are the remnants of snow that are left in the areas where cars may have parked or where snow has just been left in the street from previous plows. Because parking is prohibited, the plows then are able to proceed with speed that forces those dregs up over the berms and into the walking areas. This is after many of us have already cleared our sidewalks. And then as temperatures fall during the night, these dregs set up like concrete at the end of our driveways and on into the sidewalks. So essentially what is happening is Public Works is clearing East Fair so that it can remain wide and unobstructed and visually appealing for people to drive faster, while at the same time making it more difficult and sometimes impossible for pedestrians. Pedestrians are often forced to walk on the streets just to avoid those dregs, and I gave you guys a picture of those. I would question whether these practices really reflect the policies and vision we have in Marquette. We're not asking for any special treatment, even though East Fair does have a certain problem just because of the median is very narrow. We understand snow management is a part of living in Marquette. Everybody would like the city to plow their sidewalk. We're not asking that, but what we're saying is it really reasonable for Public Works to offload those dregs into areas that we've already cleared. We're not allowed to throw snow into the streets. Why should they be allowed to throw that stuff into our area? If Public Works actually plowed less, East Fair might be less appealing for speeding. And I'll get part 2 in my second public comment.
Thank you. Is there anyone else for public comment?
My name is Mark Schneider. I live on 418 McMillan Street. I just wanted to speak briefly today to draw attention to an issue I'm sure we've all heard about recently. Within just about a week of each other, there's two major structure fires at the Birch Grove mobile home community. As a person with several friends, and living there, they've expressed concerns. I think everyone is a little nervous down there, and I think it's really a shame that some of the, limited affordable housing that we have in the city, people might not feel safe living there. So I know, while it's an ongoing investigation, from the police, I'm sure the fire department as well, I would just kind of hope that the city as well can kind of be looking at any other avenues, whether it's inspections or reaching out to the owners of the property or whatever it might be that could kind of ease their worries and hopefully avoid this happening again. So thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else for public comment? Anyone else? Seeing none. Public comment is now closed. Brings us to presentations. We have one this evening, Board of Review by Mark Schneider.
Hello again. My name is Mark Schneider, as I said just a moment ago. I've served on the Board of Review now since I think the end of 2019. It's basically just a board of, we review our peers' taxes when they come to us with their concerns on their property taxes. And so I just have a brief presentation for you here today. Serving on the board, Steve Laurie, and I believe he's on his way out here, but I did want to mention Steve. He's really been a wealth of information. He worked for the city for years and years before serving on this board, as well as he's been on the planning committee and several others. So I just kind of want to throw a thank you out there to Steve. I've learned a lot from him, and I think he'll continue to serve the city well. Carolyn McDonald, Adeline Beauchesne, and then myself on the board. We do have one vacancy, and as I said there, I believe another soon. Yep, and we're just a board of your peers. We review, any kind of, well, not any, but a lot of problems or issues that might come up with your property taxes. You can come to us, and if what we decide doesn't satisfy you, there's a state board of review as well. We work a lot with the assessing department. They prepared the PowerPoint I'm presenting to you today. That would be Dulcie, Amanda, and Christina. I think they do a pretty good job, and yeah, they've been also learned a lot from them as well. The sorts of appeals that we see, the main ones here is just the the assessed value coming to us, thinking that the value that's been assessed itself is incorrect. There's also poverty exemptions and assessment classifications. And then other ones we kind of deal with a lot are more like clerical things, whether there's been like an error or also then veterans exemptions. Here they have some other types of appeals listed where, as you see, these listed are more things that the tax tribunal would hear and not the local board of review. Here they've listed for you a few, we have a couple tables here. This is the taxable value by the property class. As you can see here, and then on our next slide, they have for you the assessed value, which is the state equalized as they have listed here for you. We had just over 7,500 total parcels that they looked at in the 2022 year, and 389 of those are exempt. Whether it's university, city, state, or church properties. They've listed here for you the number of petitions we heard. We did hear quite a few last year. Of those, 18 of them were actual value disputes. So if that puts it in perspective, I mean, most people seem relatively happy with the assessed value of their property. Two of them that we looked at were poverty exemptions, and then, the rest were more clerical, whether it's like late filings or we looked at 60 veterans exemptions last year as well. So the board of review, as I said, it's kind of, residents of the city's peers. We're trying to be a balancer between the assessor and the taxpayer. Just trying to be kind of a objective, decider, I guess, on those issues that may come up. Here they, I guess, kind of gave us a little bit of credit. They say the workload can be very heavy, but the meetings are few. They are very few, but that March meeting can be, pretty big if any of you've ever come to that. And I do encourage anybody, if they, have an issue, to stop in the assessing office. You can fill out a petition and to come on into that March meeting, and hopefully we could help you out. Any questions from the commission or the public at the moment? Seeing none. Yes.
Excuse me, please stop. Order, guys, order. Public does not comment during presentations.
My apologies then.
Not a problem. Commissioner Smith, did you have a comment?
I just wanted to thank Mark Schneider for his hard work on this committee the last 3 or so years. I know it's a group that doesn't meet very often, but the work is important. I know you spent a lot of time making sure that the processes are followed, so folks have a place to go for that review and that appeal process. Thank you. Appreciate you.
Appreciate it, Jenna. Thanks. All righty.
Any other Commissioner Bonzel?
Sorry.
You're
Yeah,
fine.
so I also want to thank you for a really informative and concise presentation, and for all the work that you and your colleagues are doing for our community. I am curious, how many, and if you don't know the answer to this, it's fine, but I'm curious how many people we estimate are eligible for those poverty or veterans tax exemptions versus those who actually end up receiving those exemptions.
I can't give you a concrete number. I would think though probably a lot more people than, as I said, there's only the 2 poverty exemptions. I would think there's probably a lot more people. And we are provided with a table and figures based off the number of residents in a household and how much income there is, where we can determine those. But we also have, we don't have to stick just to that. We can, and that's what I like about the board of review is, we're members of the community, so we kind of know what it takes to live here, I suppose. So, yeah, I think there could be more information out there about that for sure. So I hope that answers your question.
Sure. Well, and I guess the poverty exemption numbers perhaps make sense in the sense that, somebody that's below the poverty line might be substantially less likely to own property in the city.
Absolutely.
But I'm curious, especially with the veterans exemptions, have you seen an increase in people seeking the veterans exemption recently, or has it remained relatively stable this year?
I'd say relatively stable is what I've noticed in the few years that I've done it. It seems to be usually the same people that we see, and a few new folks here and there. And I sure hope that's something that as a veteran, anybody would be aware of, I would hope.
Great. Well, hey, thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you. And everyone have a good night.
All right, moving on to our first public hearing. We have the Community Development Block Grant. City Clerk, if you could please read the background for us.
Thank you, Mayor. The City of Marquette is currently working with the Michigan Economic Development Corporation, the MEDC, to obtain a Community Development Block Grant in the amount of $8 million for the demolition of a portion of the former Marquette General Hospital owned by the Northern Michigan University Foundation. The buildings contain a significant amount of contamination from asbestos and lead paint. Total extraction, abatement, and renovation costs have been estimated at $389 per square foot for 812,000 square feet of building space for a total cost of $315.9 million. A determination of functional obsolescence has been made by a certified level 4 assessor due to out-of-date heating, plumbing, and electrical throughout the structures. The age and stone masonry construction of the older buildings provides significant barriers to retrofitting necessary updates. This property has significant barriers to reuse for the original construction purpose and is facing chronic vacancy as a result. The complex was purpose-built as a hospital, and adaptive reuse into contemporary commercial or residential uses is exceptionally difficult due to the layout and structure. Additionally, this hospital no longer holds a Michigan Certificate of Need required to operate as a hospital and would not likely be able to obtain one in the future due to the existence of the newly constructed regional hospital that replaced this facility. As a result of this obsolescence, the value of the property has dropped precipitously from over $18 million to under $11 million in less than 10 years. The CDBG application requires a public hearing prior to final approval by the City Commission. This public hearing was scheduled at the December 19th, 2022 City Commission meeting. Fiscal effect, none by this action. Recommendation, following the public hearing, approve the Community Development Block Grant application and authorize all signatures related to the submission of the application. Alternatives, as determined by the Commission.
Thank you, City Clerk. All right, this public hearing is now open. Any member of the public wishing to speak on this public hearing may approach the podium. Will be given 3 minutes per person. And again, please state your name and physical address prior to your comment. Do we have any public comment on this specific public hearing? Is there any public comment on the public hearing community development block grant? I legally have to ask 3 times. Is there any public comment? Seeing none, the public hearing is now closed. Commissioners, do we have a motion on this item? Commissioner Bonzel?
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. I move that we approve the Community Development Block Grant application and authorize all signatures related to the submission of the application.
Do we have a second? Commissioner Hanley?
I second.
Discussion?
This is a critically important component of making sure that we can get the old hospital redeveloped, which is crucially important for the future of our community for a variety of reasons. We can't have this vacant property sitting in the middle of our town for who knows how long. We have a unique opportunity to redevelop it. Redevelopment is very expensive and time-consuming and difficult, and so we're very fortunate to have this opportunity. And I also hope that it will help deal with some of the budgetary issues the city is facing and housing issues that we're facing. So critically important next step for this project. And I would only note that while I think that this project has the potential to have huge positive effects on our city, that it's critically important moving forward that we continue to apply some pressure to the developer and make sure that they're holding to the commitments they made at public meetings regarding workforce housing development as part of this project. Thank you.
Commissioner Hanley? Mayor Pro Tem Davis?
Yes, I am very happy to support this motion and want to recognize how many steps it has taken to get to this point where we're actually approving the grant. The administrative work that has gone into it, and along with the partners here that are part of this project, have done a phenomenal job of getting to this point. And I just wanted to say thank you.
Any other comment from the commission? I honestly just would ask if the city manager could maybe even provide a little bit of a brief explanation even to some of the details. I believe this has been a year, if not more, in the making to get us to this point. And I think something like that should maybe be shared a little bit more.
Certainly. Thank you. Yes, so this has been a real, I want to say, vision for, I think, over a year, but really has been brought before the commission in the past about 9 months. And it has, as you've seen in the past few agendas, has been many steps along the way and has required a lot of time and commitment from city staff, local officials, as well as our partners. And really, this speaks volumes on the partnerships and the collaboration that is happening within our community. And I think that's incredibly important to highlight. Because I don't think that there had been opportunities in the past, but also I think there hasn't just been that real energy that has been created here amongst everybody. And the time is really primed there to take advantage of some opportunity here with CDBG funding, but then also some of the other supplemental funding that has been identified for blight elimination specifically. And that is what you see here in this application, is really truly taking down that first barrier, which is blight elimination and demolition, which is incredibly costly for any development that would happen thereafter. So this is really setting the stage and really getting everybody to a point where action can happen and some of that need can really be fulfilled.
Thank you. All right. with that, just checking here. This does not require a roll call vote, so all those in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
All opposed? Motion passes 7-0. All right, moving on now to item 5, which is the Marquette Township PA 425 agreement, public hearing. City Clerk, background please.
Thank you, Mayor. Public Act 425 of 1984 authorizes 2 local units of government to share tax revenues resulting from new or expanding development within the areas of their jurisdictions. This agreement allows a temporary transfer of jurisdiction for land not exceeding 50 years from one municipality to another in place of annexation. The agreement must involve an economic development project defined by the Act as, quote, land and existing or planned improvements suitable for use by an industrial or commercial enterprise or housing development or the protection of the environment, including but not limited to groundwater or surface water. Marquette Township has approached the city of Marquette to request the exploration of a 425 agreement for a potential housing project that will be located on Forestville Road. While a majority of the development will be located in Marquette Township, a portion totaling approximately 29 acres will be located within the boundaries of the city of Marquette. J.M. Longyear, the developer, will be applying for a planned unit development through Marquette Township for the project, along with a request to the township for sewer, water, and municipal services. Under the 425 agreement, the portion of property located in the city will be included in the township PUD application. Due to the lack of direct city utilities or road access to the development, city staff supports the implementation of a 425 agreement. A 425 agreement has been negotiated between the city and township, where the city will receive tax revenue equivalent to the township's millage rate on the portion of the development covered under this agreement. The township will provide all utilities and public services to the development at no cost to the city. The Marquette Township Board approved this agreement at their December 20th, 2022 meeting. A public hearing needs to be held prior to the approval of the agreement. This public hearing was scheduled at the December 12th, 2022 City Commission meeting. Fiscal effect, none by this action. Recommendation, following the public hearing, approve the 425 agreement with the Township of Marquette and authorize the mayor and the clerk to sign it. Alternatives, as determined by the commission.
Thank you, City Clerk. All right, with that, the public hearing is now open. Any member of the public wishing to speak, again, on this public hearing, please approach the podium, and you have 3 minutes to do so. And again, please state your name and physical address. Do we have anyone for public comment on this item?
Good evening. I got a little throat thing going on, sorry. My name is Lynn Durant. I'm the supervisor of Marquette Township. And yes, that was an excellent explanation from the clerk of how a 425 works between municipalities. We are excited that this could go forward. I'm sorry, it's been doing this all day. Our attorneys have kind of worked out the agreement. We're ready to sign if you are. And I see it as just one more step into us working together on something else. Longyear's waiting for this. It's kind of the chicken and the egg type scenario where they have to know what they can do before they can announce the project, but they have to have this first. So we propose this and we're hoping that you'll agree to it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else for public comment on this item?
James Gallant, Scandia. And I had the pleasure of witnessing the meeting on the 20th of December at the township, Marquette Township. And in my personal opinion, I believe they did not follow their approved rules of procedure. And I have a FOIA request to get their bylaws, rules of procedure. I have a email from the city manager or the township manager stating that there are no bylaws or rules of procedure when I asked. And so I FOIA'd that to actually the clerk's responsibility to make sure that they're following the rules. And so that's a FOIA request now. But the lawyer, as I was saying, the lawyer said that he was told 30 years ago that the township board had never approved Robert's Rules of Order.
Sir, for public hearings,
yes, this is about this agreement.
Your public comment needs to be about
it is. It's about this
item
hearing. It's
itself.
about, I'm saying that this agreement was not legitimately approved by the township board. Being presented to you said it was approved at the 20th meeting, and it was not, according to the approved rules. And I would ask you to get a report and recommendation back from them. You could ask her right now. She's here, supervisor, except for she doesn't know either. Because they all are saying that 30 years ago, the supervisor then and the manager then, which they didn't even know their names, told the attorney that the board had never approved that. So he said, and the good thing is you don't have to suspend the rules. They're advisory only now. Exact same thing as Ron Keefe did. And this is what is considered the New World Order. This is what they're calling the new liberal world order. And this is where they start with it, and that's exactly what they did. They start with a discussion, negotiating the motion, making the motion at the end in direct contradiction to Robert's Rules of Order. And what I learned was, it's in the book. It's in the book. It says you want to learn, just go to the meeting and start participating. That's why I've been doing this for the last 20 years. And that's how I learned this. You're supposed to watch them, and then you see how they do it. You make a motion, second, discussion, vote every time. That's the semblance of order. And they did not do that. And so he asked for a 10-day extension because the clerk apparently couldn't find the articles of incorporation and the bylaws that are required by law. And the Township Act requires, it says that the township shall establish rules. Yet now the managers tell me there's no rules. So they're either not consistent with the law or they're not consistent with the Constitution, one or the other. And so please don't approve this until you have verified that they have actually followed the rules when they approve the rules. And I noticed that approval of this item isn't on the agenda. This should have been a public hearing and then an actual agenda item for approval of this, which, I mean, you could make the motion or not make the motion. It's like up in the air. See, this is the on the fly wishy-washy stuff that's going on, and you're just winging through it. And so did they. So these are my examples of how this communities need to take back from our, political elite on the way that you're running these business.
That's 3 minutes. Thank you. Is there anyone else for public comment on this item?
Margaret Brum, 404 East Magnetic, speaking as a private citizen. I think this is a good deal. I think it's a good deal because the last thing we need with the limited space in Marquette for additional housing is to put more people into a space that's already crowded. The township has more room, and the fact that the city and the township can work together on this is a good omen for future cooperation. The last thing any of us want to hear is that the city and the township aren't getting along. There's reasons to disagree, but there's no reason to disagree on this. It fits with the city of Marquette's desire to have more affordable housing, and more housing in particular, and the township has more room. And the cooperation between the entities, I'm not on the wastewater advisory board anymore, but I learned something. When the casino in Harvey was going for expansion, they switched from a septic system to the wastewater treatment plant. At the time, they brought in roughly 26 residences, again, from septic into wastewater treatment. That changed the percentage of the payment that Chocolate Township did. It raised it by 1% of the total budget for the wastewater plant. Marquette Township, I understand, is responsible for sewage treatment here. Again, the fact that we have a viable wastewater treatment plant, which we never should take for granted. Our public servants there are phenomenal. But the fact that this development can fit within that onus is, again, a good thing for our public service as well. So I'm encouraging you to consider this as a good way of progressing the city in cooperation with the township, as well as to keep notice that when we have room for more work in our utilities, that we should consider these reasonable things. I didn't hear anything, I didn't see anything in the notes about the percentage that might go up, but I saw that the township would be responsible. They're part of the area wastewater treatment as well. Again, cooperation between governmental units. I particularly like it when a problem is really huge across an area, when governmental units get together to work together to try to solve this. So I am in favor of this development. And for what it's worth, I read the paperwork and I didn't see anything wrong with the agreement. In fact, I saw some picky butt details in there that I would not have caught myself. So just in case you need somebody to say it's a decent agreement, it's a decent agreement. That's my personal opinion. I'm not speaking for anyone else. Good luck with your decision making.
Thank you. Anyone else for public comment on this item? Any other public comment? Seeing none, the public hearing is now closed. Commissioners, do we have a motion on this item? Commissioner Stonehouse.
Thank you, Your Honor. I motion to approve the 425 agreement with the Township of Marquette and to authorize the mayor and clerk to sign it.
Do we have a second on this? Commissioner Ottaway?
Second.
Any discussion, Commissioner Stonehouse?
Well, certainly to look at the old proverbial phrase, win-win, this is truly that type of a situation. I think the opportunity for the township and the city both to gain from this agreement is remarkable, and it certainly demonstrates the great cooperation between the two municipalities. And as one of our speakers mentioned, certainly speaks well to the opportunities perhaps in the future to continue in that same manner. Enthusiastically support, Your Honor.
Thank you. Commissioner Ottaway?
I echo Commissioner Stonehouse. This is a win-win. It's costing the city zero, and it's also increasing the housing stock locally. It's going to help drive the prices down possibly for all the other houses because of that. So because of that, I 100% emphatically approve this as well.
Commissioner Smith?
I just wanted to add that I think any opportunity we have to work with our neighboring municipalities is worth considering. And this one especially checks some of the boxes of things that we are working on here in the city of Marquette that we can't do alone. Housing is something that we're going to have to look to our neighboring communities to cooperate and coordinate with. And while it may not be the affordable housing that we're looking for, at least not entirely, I think we've got an issue with all of our housing market here in the city of Marquette, Marquette Township, and in our Marquette County. So I do believe that this will significantly help as long as the build out is able to happen, and I hope it is, with our housing needs here. And I appreciate the Marquette Township working with us on this.
Thank you. Commissioner Bunzel?
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. I'm curious, do we have anybody here who can speak about the development itself? Or
I do believe there was a representative from Longyear,
Okay.
Alyssa Arwood,
Hi.
who is here.
awesome, thank you so much. It's up to you.
Okay, if you throw it back to me here, I'll allow for privileged comment for it. Yes. So you're good. Yes.
Okay, thanks.
All right.
Go ahead.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate you being here to answer some of our questions. I'm just curious if you could just give us a general overview. I know we saw some information about, potential site plans and things like that, but just what is this development? What is this neighborhood going to look like, feel like? What kind of homes are going to exist here? Maybe different types of homes, different sizes, different lot sizes, price ranges, that sort of thing. And I'm also curious what kind of public benefits or amenities might be part of this development as well.
Okay. So Forestville, so JM Longyear owns roughly 3,000 acres in Forestville. So the lot of the land that the Nequamanon Trail Network North Trailhead sits on, that's on Longyear land. So it's been under Longyear ownership for probably over 100 years now. Held on to it for a very long time. Most of it is in scenic residential, and then a lot of it is under the Commercial Forest Act program. So the Commercial Forest Act program is where you have to provide, because you harvest timber on the land, you provide recreational opportunities on that land as well. So it's been under that for a very long time. This piece of property that we're talking about today has recently been pulled out of the Commercial Forest program to get it ready for development. The 425 was the next piece, which it went off in the township, so it's here tonight. And then after this, we'll be applying to the township zoning if this is all one piece of property. We plan to apply as a planned unit development. This is on 161 acres of that big 3,000 square foot footprint. And we'll be preserving 50% of that, though, as green space. So really, the project will be on roughly 80 acres of land in Forestville. This is a project where we're contemplating 230 roughly homes on the piece of property, and they'll be in various sizes and footprints and different styles. So we have 7 home designs. One of them is a townhouse, which is 1,500 square feet, and then they move up from there up to around 2,100 square feet. So it will be a mixture of duplexes, triplexes, or fourplexes for that townhouse design, where it's a little bit smaller, more compact. That's really meant to serve sort of an aging population in the community. We hear about that a lot, that we have a growing demographic of people who are looking to downsize. We find that that's the type of person that stays in a home, and then those homes don't become available for the next people, and so on and so forth. So we're really using that as kind of, catering to that market, to that demographic. That's about half of the homes. And then the other half, we're looking to do varying different sizes between those 6 other designs. Most of the site can withstand basements. They all have attached garages, and they're all single story as well. Again, we kept them single story because we want to cater to as many demographics as we can. If you're aging in place or your mobility changes throughout your life, we want people to be able to stay in that home as long as they can. The homes are meant to be primary residences of people who live in Marquette or want to live in Marquette. Longyear hears about this often, that we're part of the business community. We employ 230 people ourselves in the area. So it's quickly becoming very apparent to us that people want quality housing to stay here and live here. So that's kind of the differences of the homes on the site. The townhomes will be like a traditional condo in that you own inside your interior paint, but the rest of the houses will be on private lots. So they can go from 10,000 square feet up to roughly 20,000 square feet, just depending on what you want to take care of or your preference. Really, again, taking into account those different modes of life, what's happening for people at the moment, what they can take care of or what they can't, or what they want to take care of, what they want for kids, or if they don't want that. Some of the public things on the site, so we will have NTN permanent trails on the site. We'll create new trails for them. We're also doing kids' play areas, a pump track, learning learning nodes about proper forestry management, learning about regenerating the forest and what that takes. That is J.M. Longyear's sort of bread and butter, is our selective harvesting and the way that we responsibly carbon capture with bringing our trees down and doing it in a responsible way. So the trails, the learning stuff, I'm trying to think of other things. I think that's it right now for what we have for site amenities. But the other thing would be too that we are going to bring the township water and sewer up Forestville Road. And so then everybody will be able to be on that system as well. And it provides significant length of that for the township as well to continue to move off of.
Okay, thank you. I think I saw on one of the maps there's gonna be like a community building type thing too.
Yeah, we're looking at that. Possibly for storage for people's outdoor stuff. So, your house, you have your basement, you have your garage, but maybe if they want to store like bikes and kayaks and things like that. So,
Sure.
yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point about, statistically, the baby boomer generation staying in their homes much longer than any previous generation. That's part of what's going on. So I appreciate that you addressed that. I'm just curious what the timeline for development looks like. I know this is a phased development, so especially from our standpoint, we're talking about, we could get some new revenue. We'll get new revenue presumably once phases 3 and 4 are built out. When do we expect that to happen?
So zoning and permitting and all of that stuff is probably going to take us to the middle of the end of summer. And then hopefully we could get shovels in the ground for early utility or road work by fall of this year, if all goes well. Again, it is phased, and we have to be cognizant of the way that the township wants to take us through those phases. So we're really looking to them to kind of help us with figuring out that right kind of scale for every year. This is a 5 to 8 year timeline, also depending on labor availability in the area. So that is a large number of homes. A lot of home builders here, they kind of say, 3 to 4 houses a year, and that's kind of where they top out. So it's also very dependent on labor and all that availability, but probably 5 to 8 year timeline total of all the homes.
That makes a lot of sense. I think, and I assume, price ranges will be typical for new construction. So probably that 300,000 plus type range. Would that be accurate, or? It
would be market rate. So the nice thing is that because J.M. Longyear does work in the wood product space, we're going to do everything we can to leverage any of those partnerships around the UP, help source anything that we can source locally to help bring all of that down. But yes, they will be market rate homes.
Okay, well, yeah, thank you for the information. I really appreciate it. I think I don't have any other questions. Oh, I guess one question I did want to ask is about walkability and pedestrian use of this neighborhood. What are the plans for that? I'm just curious about that.
So there's sidewalks and bike paths throughout. So again, different modes of transportation throughout. So it'd be on a hard surface. We'll have our own internal trails that also lead to NTN trails. The NTN trail will connect into the city and then out into the North Trailhead as well.
Awesome, thank you. I think that's all the questions I have for you, so thank you. I just had one question for our city manager, which is, could you just give us a maybe rough back of the envelope estimate of what kind of revenue we might expect to see from per year from this development, from this PA 425 agreement once it's built out?
Sure, good question, actually. And what you saw in the PA 425 agreement also is kind of the equation or the calculation for that, and that would be using the township's millage rate, which is at just over or shy of 4.8 mills, and then it would be calculated based off of the homes that were in that footprint that were originally within the city limits. And so at this point, we don't know what that number is going to be. When we look at some of the preliminary maps, it's about 40 homes. So when we do rough calculation based off of the prices that we're kind of just talked about, but being conservative, and please don't hold me to this, but we are looking at about $30,000 at a conservative side compared to about the $3,000 that we receive right now.
Great. And then my only other question about this development is this is an agreement for 50 years, and my understanding is that the township is building and maintaining infrastructure for this development. What kind, let's say 50 years elapses, this is around the time roads and sewers and electric infrastructure might need replacing. Who would be liable for that if this PA 425 agreement was not renewed after 50 years?
Yes, and actually there's a couple of options there, I believe, but I'm going to allow Suzanne to kind of reach out and answer that question because there has been much work on that on her side.
So the agreement specifies that when it terminates, or if it terminates, that the township will continue to own all of that infrastructure and will continue to be responsible for the maintenance of it. It would be a little bit awkward if that wasn't the case, since it's tied into the rest of their infrastructure. So they will continue to have that obligation, and they will continue to be the owner of it.
And I do believe there was an option for an extension at some point, correct?
Correct. So it's a 50-year agreement, but obviously if this development happens, with that infrastructure being where it is, the thought would be that that would be extended then after that 50 years. There is also the ability to terminate it under certain circumstances. So for example, if for some reason this development can't happen or doesn't happen, there's the ability for the parties to terminate it. That property comes back to the city. But those circumstances are somewhat limited. We're not going to try to make this development not happen. It's if the development doesn't happen on its own.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I think this is going to be a positive thing for the community. And I apologize for asking a lot of questions, but I feel like we kind of haven't had a chance to ask these questions in a public forum yet. So I really appreciate your answers, and also appreciate you being here to answer some questions as well. I mean, the reality is we're going to need greenfield development to meet our communities and our country's housing needs. We would certainly prefer redevelopment of places like the old hospital in existing neighborhoods and existing areas, but and we can and should be doing that, but it's expensive, it's difficult, it's challenging. So we need projects like this to meet the needs for our community moving forward. I mean, also the market rate brand new housing of today is the affordable housing, the entry-level housing of 30 years from now. So I'll be supporting this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Davis.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. If you could address traffic and road access into the development.
Sure. So when we started looking at this project in December of 2021, we knew that traffic was going to be something that needed to be talked about. So we had a traffic study done at that time. The traffic study was shared with the road commission as well as the township. And it seems as if, well, at the time, and I believe still possibly, that there is some ARPA funding hanging out there that the road commission was thinking of maybe going after in order to help support executing on the master access plan that they defined and then was adopted by the township. That bypass went to the township and it was voted down, and then the township came back together and they approved the road commission looking at that funding request in a different way. So not including that bypass, looking at different solutions. Some of those solutions included looking at the Wright Street intersection again, a possible eastern entrance into the Longyear project, and a couple other kind of smaller items. I can't speak for the road commission. I don't know what's happening with that currently, but Longyear has reinvested in another traffic study, which we're having done now, to look at what we can do in terms of helping access in maybe more of an accessible and an immediate way. So how can we help contribute to kind of fixing that and moving that along, knowing that our project is going to have an effect on the access there. So there's some items that could help calm the traffic a bit, reduce speeds. Maybe people don't take left-hand turns out of Forestville Road onto Wright Street. That seems to be kind of the major area where it's getting pretty bad. We've also offered to the Road Commission that any right-of-way needed to do any fixes, because Longyear owns on either side of Forestville Road, we are happy to work with them on that, the right-of-way needed for that. So we are waiting for that traffic study to come back, see what's within that, and then we plan to roll all of that into our submission and work with the Road Commission on the township on figuring out what is a phased approach here and how can it be accessible and attainable for everybody. So that's where we're at.
Anyone else have a question while we have Alyssa here? Okay. Thank you. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, of course.
All right, I'll ask one more time here. Commissioners, is there any further discussion on the item? Okay. Seeing none. This also does not require a roll call vote, so all those in favor, please say yes.
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 All those opposed? Passes 7-0. All right, now, moving on to our consent agenda. Commissioners, do we have a motion on consent? Commissioner Smith.
I move that we approve consent as presented.
Thank you. Do we have a second? Mayor Pro Tem Davis?
I'll second the motion.
Any discussion? All those in favor, please say yes.
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 All those opposed? Passes 7-0. All right, moving on to new business, item 7, letter of resignation of Commissioner Bonzel. City Clerk, if you could please read the background for this.
So this was, Your Honor, kind of a late breaking item, I guess, late in the week. We don't really have any background. I'll just say that our office received a letter of resignation from Commissioner Bonzel, I believe Thursday, early afternoon, it looks like, and then it was forwarded onto the commission.
Okay, thank you. Do we have a motion on this item? Commissioner Smith?
I would move that we accept the letter of resignation from Commissioner Evan Bonzel as listed in his letter, and if memory serves, that would be effective tomorrow. I'm looking at him for a head nod. Okay, regrettably, and you know, happy for him, but we'll get to the comments after. Not happy to see him go, though. Okay, that's not part of the motion, sorry.
Do we have a second?
Second, Your Honor.
Thank you, Commissioner Stonehouse. Any discussion?
Yeah, I would like to thank Commissioner Bonzel for his service on the city commission, for helping to move the needle on some important issues for the residents of Marquette, and I certainly wish him and his spouse all of the best of luck in their new endeavors over in Wisconsin.
Commissioner Stonehouse?
Only that I note he has 5 hours and 7 minutes left as a commissioner. And we certainly wish you the very best in your new endeavors, and I'm sure you will be extraordinarily successful.
Commissioner Hanley?
I would personally like to thank Commissioner Bonzel for everything that he does for this community. I think we can all take notes on the amount of public input that Evan, or Commissioner Bonzel, gets for everything that he does when it comes to being on this commission. We were lucky to have you for as long as we did. I am extremely sad to see you go. Coming onto this commission, you were one that reached out and made sure that as I learned the ropes, I learned them well, and I appreciated every bit of help that you gave me. I am going to miss you. I am happy that you get to live near your wife, but I wish that that was in Marquette.
I will just also add that I think we all really appreciate the last 3 years of service you've given this community, and I definitely think anytime someone says housing in Marquette, your name will be one of the first things they think of, and I think you've definitely helped, maybe even more than move the needle, but really gotten the city to focus on the housing problems in the city, and I just want to thank you for the time you have given us, and I'm very happy for you that you and your wife can be living together in the same city now, full-time. I was gonna say, do you have a?
I have maybe some comments I can make during commissioner comment at the end, but I actually have a question. I mean, should I vote on this motion or can I not? I mean, I'm confused right now, I have to admit.
Technically, under the charter, your resignation does not have to be accepted. It's effective when you provide it. We often do a motion and a vote as a formality, but you've submitted it, and it is effective tomorrow regardless of whether it's voted on or not. So I would say whether you vote on it or not, it doesn't matter. It probably would feel a little weird. Maybe you don't want to just because it feels sort of awkward.
And as a point of consistency, I believe former Commissioner Hill did vote on hers.
All right, thank you. I appreciate that information.
Okay, with that, all those in favor of accepting this letter of resignation, please say yes.
Yes.
Yes. All those opposed?
No.
Motion passes 6-1. Commissioner Hanley is the no vote. All right, moving on to item 8, procedure to fill city commissioner vacancy. City clerk, background?
Thank you, Mayor. The resignation of Commissioner Evan Bonzall creates a vacancy on the Marquette City Commission. Under the provisions of the Marquette City Charter, the City Commission has 60 days in which to fill a vacancy via appointment. Since late 2017, the City Commission has made 4 appointments for vacancies, and staff is recommending the board follow the process originally established in November of 2017. Under that process, applications were made available both online at the city's website and in person at the city clerk's office, and interested parties were given an application submission deadline. Following the deadline, completed applications and related materials were disseminated to the City Commission for review. At a subsequent meeting, the commission then provided applicants an opportunity to speak and made an appointment to fill the vacancy. In order to be appointed, an individual must meet all eligibility requirements stipulated by the city charter. Fiscal effect, none by this action. Recommendation, direct the city clerk to make city commission application forms available online and in the clerk's office, and to accept applications from interested parties until 4 p.m. on Tuesday, January 24th, 2023, and to then proceed with the appointment of a new city commissioner at the January 30th, 2023 regular meeting. Alternatives as determined by the commission.
Thank you, City Clerk. Commissioners, do we have a motion on this item? Commissioner Hanley?
I move that we direct the city clerk to make city commission application forms available online and in the clerk's office, and to accept applications from interested parties until 4 p.m. on Tuesday, January 24th, 2023, and then to proceed with the appointment of a new city commissioner at the January 30th, 2023 regular meeting.
Thank you. And do we have a second on this item? Commissioner Ottaway?
A second.
Commissioner Hanley, any discussion? Commissioner Ottaway?
Just want to point out that I was just appointed, so I'm fully aware of how this process works, and I think it's a good testament to why we actually go through the appointment process. As you guys probably see in the public, things change. People have to move. There are reasons people have to step down, and if we were to hold a special election, that would cost tens of thousands of dollars every time we did it. So this is absolutely the best decision to make.
Okay. Any other discussion? Okay. Seeing none, all those in favor, please say yes.
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 All those opposed? Motion passes 7-0. All right, and if anyone in the public is following along, just a reminder that item 9 is now after the city manager comments, so that will bring us to our second public comment of the evening. I'll say it one more time. Public comments may not exceed 3 minutes per person, and again, please state your name and physical address when giving public comment.
Barb outside, 1324 North Front. I honestly debated bringing this issue about the street plowing to the meeting. And I want to emphasize that my views, these are my views and the views of my frustrated neighbors. I talked to pretty much everybody on East Fair, and the consensus really is that we're pretty frustrated. I did want to, I presented that photo because I actually contacted Public Works. Sadly, I haven't heard back from them, but I wanted to show them actually the physical effects of what we have to deal with after these night plows. We've been told that the city sidewalk plows are following a specific map, and I think based on safe routes to school. I might just point out that the city sidewalk plows do the north side of Fair. There's no kids walking to school on the north side of Fair. We have 4 kids on our block that walk, and they literally are trying to navigate this mess that's on the sidewalk in the morning because it happens at night. We've also been told that another reason the city doesn't plow, and I'm not necessarily saying that the city needs to plow it, I'm saying the city needs to not plow into it. But we've been told that the reason why the city doesn't use the street plow is because there's no place to throw the snow. But we somehow managed to find a place to clear the sidewalk ourselves. So, I mean, I'm just pointing that out. I know we're in the early stages of kind of rewriting the master plan. I think it's really critical that we examine, every aspect of the entire city system to make sure they're in sync with what we value as a community. The other thing, I think we should be prioritizing, walkers and pedestrians, bikers and all that, at least on the same level playing field as we do for motor vehicles. Personally, I think we should kind of bump them up just because they're a more vulnerable group, but at least treat everyone on the same playing field as we do the cars in the community. So to be clear, I'm actually asking for them to plow less, which may seem kind of radical. And I don't know if it would actually work, but I do know that having a street that's wide open it does encourage people to go faster. And I also know that it's having a sidewalk that's full of debris makes it pretty impossible for people to walk, especially because it's in the morning and they're walking to school when it's dark out. It's forcing them into the road. So that's pretty much it. I'm going to tear up because I'm so sad that Evan's leaving. And welcome, Jeremy. And you know what? I hope you don't spend another 3 minutes of our time talking about parliamentary procedure, because honestly, I don't think there's anyone in this room that really is interested in that. Thanks.
Is there anyone else for public comment?
Yes, James Scandia, and yes, of course, I am going to be continuing this conversation until you start following rules around here, and which may never be never. But I would ask you, and I think that it's a clear unwillingness of people to participate in your dozens of openings in your boards and committees. It's a testament to how frustrating and stressful it is to want to even join in with this mess. They don't know what's going on, and you just got to surrender and just go along with whatever and laugh through it and blah, blah, blah. And it'll all come out in the wash. So I'd ask you, Mr. Mayor, to please reiterate the request to your attorney to determine and provide you and the community with what's the process and the procedure and the forms to file a complaint with the ethics ordinance. It was in the charter. It was required to be put in the charter. I helped with all that to get that in the charter. And for them to say specifically what they did, which is the same as the state, which is that you cannot inject your own personal opinion and represent that as the opinion of the city. And the city commission has voted that Robert's Rules of Order is the parliamentary procedure, so that is the opinion of the city. So if you're going outside of that, that's your personal opinion. And you've clearly shown today that you're going to do that the whole time. And because we did show that under Cody's rules, when the guy had the chair, he had the floor for a presentation. He clearly jumped right in and said that he cannot ask a question to a member of the public and his presentation. Well, of course he can. And so you dictated that it is not going to happen. And the members now do not have a right to appeal a decision of the chair. Can't you just majority vote, appeal a decision of the chair? Now that's not available here because you did not allow that. You denied them that opportunity. They don't have that right under Cody's rules. Under Robert's rules, they do, which you should have said. Yes, you're not going to unless you'd override that decision, and then you offer that to them to show that that is available to them. And so this is in real time. This happens in real time all the time, and then people just get to what to expect, and then they have perceptions. And I would ask you to please to provide the orientations for the new members, the boards and committee members that you're appointing, and the Robert's Rules of Order trainings that are provided to these people, right here in front of God and everybody at the board meeting. Do it so everybody knows. I was turned away because they were just having the meeting of the orientation. They said, no, I couldn't attend because I wasn't an appointee. So you do that in closed session. And I'll never forget at the Peter White Library when I was asking the lady, and I was talking to her about this very same thing a long time ago. And I said, hey, you know, you didn't make the motion first. You knew you were going to do something, and they were doing something about the bank account. And they said, yeah, okay. I said, you knew you were going to vote. How come you didn't make the motion? She said, well, I said, do you remember your trainings when Ron Keefe told you have to make the motion first and you second? And she went, and her face was so precious. She went, well, he did, didn't he? I said, yeah, of course he did, because that's the rule. So right now, if you did those trainings here, you showed everybody in the community that, yeah, you folks are supposed to be doing that, and you were actually trained by your attorney to do this, and then you just start doing it. This is what's increasing the risk of suicidal behavior in our community. Please.
That's 3
correct this,
minutes.
sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else for public comment this evening?
Margaret Brum, last comment of the evening. You're about to go into closed session to talk to your lawyers about the future of the Cliffs Dow site. Earlier in the work session, I referred to that land as cursed. I would encourage all of you to look on YouTube at the drone video that I had taken of the land from the sky. And keep in mind that they stopped working there in 1969. And in the year 2018, I think I had the drone video taken. It is still a wasteland. And it's a wasteland because the things that normally grow after industrial activity stops don't grow there. If you notice that any time a building is abandoned or an industrial site is abandoned, very quickly an industrial war that ended in 1969, where it is still a wasteland. And as I said, all of the good commissioners who looked at this situation and tried to resolve it have been frustrated because it is a very complicated problem. And it has never had enough money to get rid of it entirely. So it's been done, we'll do a Superfund cleanup and put in the blood plasma place. We'll do special remediations so that Northern can buy the land to put the soccer training fields, but they have to have special permission to dig the hole to put the coach's ladder on, because they can't dig more than 4 feet underneath there because there are heavy metals in the ground there. And they have actually a barrier in place so that nobody comes into contact with heavy metals. So when I use the phrase wasteland and cursed, I too am frustrated by the fact that Cliffs Dow is still there. I remember when it was shut down, I was a young girl, and I remember it was shut down, and I went around the island, which I used to do just about every day, walking, and I told my parents I was upset that it still smelled out there. And my dad said it was going to take a long time for the smell to go away. Well, the smell has never gone away. The damage to the land is enormous, and the environmental committing of waste there cannot be remediated, has not been able to be remediated by anything that's been tried so far. So I would encourage you, when you talk to your lawyers, to speak to them with skepticism, to ask if anyone else they know has done this, and to ask them what the odds are of success in whatever they want to do. And as again, I wish you good decision making. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else for public comments this evening?
Pete Fraser, 460 East Ridge, Marquette. Sad to see you go, Evan. I did surprise you would leave because I figured you'd be here longer than the city manager was, you know. I figure he'll be back. He'll be the next city manager eventually. Your board's got a lot of work to do. I replaced 2 members when I was in my terms, and then a couple city managers. You guys have already replaced 1 city manager and 2 commissioners, so good luck to you. Hopefully best. And the whole Forestville thing, I'm glad the township's working on it. It's great for the community. Be interested to see what happens with it, because obviously you'll get more pushback than the city will do, because all the people like to do recreation there and stuff like that. Be interested to see which type of maps, because I know Swadley did a development in there for a while back here on Woods, and there's also another development that I've been near on the other side. There's a bit further up. So be interested to see where you put it. You'll get all the pushback from all the people saying they want it for recreation. Commission doesn't see it, doesn't have to hear for it. That's good. I've been there, done that, so glad you get us here, but good luck if you'll see you next year when you become governor, Evan. We'll see you, governor. Thanks.
Is there anyone else wishing to give public comment this evening? Okay. With that, public comment is now closed, which brings us to comments from the commission. Gonna start with Commissioner Stonehouse and loop around this way, if that's all right. I believe I started with Commissioner Smith last time.
Boy, I'm getting all the start buttons tonight, but let me not forget to do this, please, so the public is very well aware of it. What I'm holding up is our commission rules. We accept them every year. They're how we manage, run the meetings, run the commission, black and white, publicly available on the website. Section 4, Para A, subparagraph 1, Rules of Parliamentary Procedure. In order to facilitate the running of an efficient and orderly meeting, the rules of parliamentary practice as found in the latest edition of Robert's Rules of Order will be used for guidance only by the Commission, provided that they are not in conflict with these rules of procedure, city ordinances, city charter, or applicable statutes. No action taken by the Commission in good faith shall be determined invalid by reason of the Commission's failure to adhere strictly to Robert's Rules of Order or these rules of procedure. Now, I think everybody understands what I just said, which essentially is that this commission will use Robert's Rules of Orders for guidance as we conduct meetings. We do not strictly adhere to them by our own rule as established by this commission. So please, as people may rail about that, please understand this is the basis of operation as accepted by this governing body and has been such, to my knowledge, for 20 years. Second item, I had a rare opportunity Saturday, to go to the Dome and to witness the deployment ceremony for the 107th Engineer Battalion as it prepares to move for 1 year of construction activity and supervision in Kuwait. 151, I believe, members of the battalion, men and women, will be gone for 1 year. Our community members, our voters, our friends, our neighbors, and they will be working in this country's interests in an area of the world that we can perceive to be having some danger. But they are doing that because they are citizens first. They are soldiers second, but they are twice the citizen, really, because they represent both us in a military fashion, highly trained, and also in a civilian fashion, doing the things that they do to earn a living. Now, I'm an old retired soldier, and I went on many deployments. And watching one unit move out like that does kind of tug at your heart a little bit, remembering other places, other times, and other airplanes. But it was a remarkably well-run ceremony. All the family members were there. Everybody had a chance to talk, to communicate. The family support groups are set up. These units don't deploy without having special units that fall in behind them to be able to deal with those problems that will invariably come up with a family. The car breaks, the furnace breaks. What do I do? My husband's in Kuwait. How do I manage? Well, there's systems set up to do that, to keep the home fires burning. And that was just a rare opportunity. And I would ask you all to put these young men and women in your prayers as they go through this very difficult time overseas, and again, that they all return safely. I will put one corollary on that. In 1940, in October of 1940, in fact, President Franklin Delano Roosevelt activated the entire National Guard across this country in preparation for World War II. He did that for 1 year of training. That was the deal. We're going to activate all you guys for 1 year. Those units came home 6 years later. So what was supposed to be 1 year turned into 6 years. And for the 107th, the way home meant sending a unit through New Guinea to fight in some of the worst combat of World War II, to put troops ashore at Operation Torch, the invasion of North Africa in 1943, to take the bulk of the battalion over the beaches at Normandy on the first day, fight their way through the Battle of the Bulge, on through the Battle of the Rhineland, ending up in Czechoslovakia, finally when the war was done, 6 years later. So they're the same people, just a different generation than we might remember way back then. But thank you, Your Honor. Sorry for the history lesson, but these moving moments don't happen all that frequently. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Commissioner Vonzel?
Yes, thank you, Your Honor, and thank you for chairing that, Commissioner Stonehouse. I first just want to respond to a couple of public comments folks made. First, I think there was a question asked of, why doesn't the city commission make a motion to have a housing plan? Well, I've got good news. We have one, basically. I served as the chairperson of the Ad Hoc Housing Committee. We created a set of recommendations and our final report that was given to this commission back in 2021. And that report and those recommendations have since been adopted as part of our community master plan, and we've partially implemented those recommendations. So still some progress to be made for sure, but we are working on implementing that plan, and it does exist. So that's why I didn't move to create a housing plan at our previous meeting. We already have one. To Barb Auzai, I just want to thank you for the insight that you continue to provide into pedestrian safety and mobility in our community. I think it's a conversation that really needs to happen in Marquette. I think we often pat ourselves on the back as, oh, we're like a bikeable city, and that's very true. But especially in the winter months, walkability and bikeability become a really big problem. I think we have a lot more snow to deal with than just about anywhere else in the country, but it's definitely a challenge we need to think about. And I think that, perhaps the solution, rather than plowing less, might be in the long run, especially as we're doing this community master planning process, to start, and we're creating our capital improvement plans in the coming years, to really start thinking about how do we devote more space in the streetscape to pedestrians and to pedestrian mobility, so that things like this don't happen, where you have a residential neighborhood with a sidewalk that's getting blocked constantly by snow getting thrown off the road by the plows, right? So I wholeheartely agree with the sentiment that we need to be treating pedestrians and their mobility and safety as just as important as mobility and safety for vehicular traffic. So please keep fighting that fight, and let's try and get more people involved and have more conversations about that in this room, because it's really important. I just want to thank my colleagues for some of the very kind words they shared earlier. I will read a portion of my letter of resignation. It's quite long, but I do want to make sure that I at least thank folks who have made such a big impact on my life and have allowed me to serve this community over the last few years. I really want to thank all of the people who voted for me. First of all, when I knocked on people's doors as like a 22-year-old recent college graduate 3 or 4 years ago, a lot of them probably their first thought was, is this kid like old enough to vote? And some of them asked me that to my face, and it seemed like a fair enough question. I wasn't offended. I'm deeply grateful to folks who vested their confidence in that 22-year-old kid who was knocking on their door, and I really hope more young people try to run for office, because while it was often frustrating and you occasionally ran into some ageism and things like that, I think that on the whole it was a huge growing opportunity for me personally. But I also think that one of the things I was pleasantly surprised by was how open and enthusiastic many people in the community were, not only to see younger people involved, but to see new people involved. So I would encourage anyone, especially younger folks or those who are young at heart still, to jump in and get involved, and perhaps run for local office, run for the city commission. maybe apply for my vacancy. I also want to thank all of the people who've reached out to me over the years with different ideas and questions and concerns, criticism as well. And I also want to thank the many people who took a lot of time out of their very busy lives to help me knock doors and go talk to voters when I was running for office back in 2019 and again last year. Especially my parents, who will always be tied for number one in my heart, but also in the door knocking record books, because I did keep painstaking statistics on exactly how many doors they knocked to help me get elected. So, yeah. I also want to thank my wife, Aubrey, my family, the rest of my family, and my friends. This can be a stressful and frustrating job, as I think we all have experienced at one time or another. And it's so important for anyone who steps up to serve their community in this capacity to have that support, sympathetic ears, and get some advice and some constructive criticism from people who we love and respect. And I don't think any of us would be able to do this job if we didn't have that. And I also want to thank the many folks who donated generously to my city commission campaigns over the years. We had a lot of small donations from people who gave what they could afford online. And I just want folks to know that we do have some funds remaining in those campaign accounts. I don't have any use for those funds anymore. And I really wanted to do something that I felt would have a positive impact on the community. So those remaining campaign funds that people gave, which isn't really my money, it's theirs. I want them to know that I will be donating those remaining funds to the Marquette Area Public Schools Education Foundation. Still working out the details, but just some kind of grant program to benefit Marquette students and teachers. I would not be sitting up here if it wasn't for all those people who I mentioned and more. It's been said that it takes a village, but I think in the context of raising children, but it also takes a village to get good people to want to, and people who are going to work hard and listen to the community, like to get people to step up and run for office. It's hard, it's challenging. There were a lot of times I honestly, felt like kind of throwing in the towel. And I think that most of us sitting up here can relate to that to some degree or another. So I just hope that our community continues to honor public service and respect it and appreciate it, and encourage others in the community who they think would do a good job to get involved. Even if you don't feel comfortable sitting up here with the 7 of us yourself, maybe you know somebody who you think would be perfect for the job. I'd encourage you to have a conversation with them if so. I just want to conclude by once again thanking all the people who I've served with, all the city staff who have played such a critical role in basically everything that I or anybody else in this commission has worked on over the last little over 3 years. Especially our city manager, Karen, Suzanne, thank you for your service. And also, I was very privileged to work very closely with, Dennis Stakowitz and with Sean Hobbins and other folks on our community development team over there with Dennis on the housing committee. And that was a privilege. And certainly that final report and those housing recommendations that I hope will be fully implemented would never have been possible without their help. So thank you. And I just want to conclude by saying that, this is not an easy decision. I do feel it's the right one. But I'm certainly reluctant to be leaving all of you on this commission. I've made a lot of lifelong friends in this position, a lot of valuable relationships. I've learned so much. I hope I've helped move the needle in the right direction. And I wish my fellow commissioners, whoever is appointed to replace me, and the people in this room and people in Marquette who might be watching at home, success and wisdom in the coming years. Because if there's one thing that I'm absolutely certain of after a little over 3 years of serving on this commission, it's that the decisions that are made in this room over the next few years really will determine whether Marquette remains a livable community, and a place where people want to live or not. Aubrey and I love Marquette. We both grew up here. We hope to come back someday. But no matter where life takes us, we will always cherish and remember the time we spent here. And Marquette will always be our hometown. So thank you.
Commissioner Hanley?
How do I follow that? I will say thank you for all the wisdom that you've always given us, Evan. The time that you dedicated to this city will not soon be forgotten. I really appreciate everything you've done. Other than that, I'd like to keep it short, except for to wish Commissioner Smith a very happy birthday today.
Commissioner Ottaway?
Sure. A couple things. First, the Downtown Development Authority is offering a free 3-hour coupon if you go on the Passport mobile app. So I encourage you all to do that. If you don't know how to use the Passport app, please reach out to the DDA, because there are people there that are extremely friendly that are willing to help. Or worst case scenario, you can reach out to me directly. I would help you anytime. Second, just another piece from the DDA. The DDA is looking for a designer for a farmer's market rebrand. I encourage all of the awesome artisans in our community to take a look at what the farmer's market is looking for and see if you can maybe help out with that. I think there's some awesome local talent that could possibly step up with that. So take a peek. Lastly, I'm just going to say, Commissioner Bonsall, sorry to see you go. I'm sorry to the community for scaring you away as I got here, apparently. I did a little bit of research today, and the clerk may or may not think I'm wrong with this, but in my opinion, I think that in the 2022 election, you received more commission votes than any other candidate has ever received in the city's history. I went back in the logs and looked as far as I could, and that was, it's public knowledge, but I think it's a testament. You received 5,119 votes, and I think that that's something that you should really hold your head high with, because you did make an impact in the community. If you had 5,000 people vote for you in an election, that's a huge impact, and that's something really to always cherish and be proud of. I wish you the best. I know that even though Marquette's losing your expertise, your knowledge, your wisdom with everything, you're going to do big things, and I look forward to seeing them. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Davis?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I want to recognize the passing of one of our citizens, Jim Zazorni, who is very involved in our Parks and Rec Committee. He's a volunteer at the Senior Center and a very strong advocate of those with disabilities. As a member of the Parks and Rec Advisory Board, he assisted in many city projects and policy decisions, and despite his own disabilities from an accident and other health conditions, he remained active in city work. He was respected and known for his kindness and never stop fighting attitude, and that was a quote from some of the people he worked with in the Parks and Rec Department. So thank you, Jim, for being part of our community, and my condolences to his family. We as commissioners get all of the minutes of the committee meetings and the advisory boards, and I couldn't help when I read the minutes of the recent Traffic and Parking Advisory Committee, and I was impressed with the sincerity of the members and the issues that they're discussing. Most of the committee members are new this year, and it wasn't that long ago when we didn't have enough people on that committee to even hold meetings. So with the assistance of the police and the planning department, they're discussing some really important issues, and some that we've talked about. How do we get around in the winter, the pedestrian safety, and all of the popularity of the bike path. And wow, there's like so many different modes of transportation on the bike path and how crowded it is, and just crosswalk safety and parking issues, and all of which are really vital to the safety of our residents and visitors. So thank you, committee members, and I know that the chair is here this evening. Thank you, Barb. And I look forward to hearing some of the recommendations in the future. It's also our time to say goodbye to Commissioner Bonzo. And I wish you all the best in this very important life-changing events. And you've been so significant in highlighting the housing issues, and your service on the Ad Hoc Housing Committee really clarified some of the steps for us to move forward with that. And I appreciate that the work that and the impact that we'll have for our future. So that means that there's an open position on the commission, and since we we will not be having an election, I'm hoping that we get a good, robust group of people that are applying, and I really hope that the voters here in Marquette let each of us commissioners know how they feel about each of those candidates so that we can make a decision that represents the opinion of those who choose to provide us with the opinion. So thank you. That's all I have, Mayor.
All right. Sorry. Thank you. Commissioner Smith.
I've got 4 things. One, Barb, thank you for your comments on the snow. I don't know how to solve that problem, but I'm hoping we can continue those discussions. I know exactly what you're talking about. I'm there often. I've got friends and family right on your block. And it happens other places in the city too. I witnessed it on West Washington Street today. I think DPW is doing a great job. I also think our residents and our business owners have valid concerns. It's just the snow load issue that we're still trying to figure out the best way to balance it. So I've heard you. I'll be talking with the city manager about that and hoping that we can try to come up with some solutions. Appreciate you saying something. 2, Mark Schneider had mentioned the Birchview, the 2 incidents that had happened there. Luckily, we had either minor injuries or no injuries. No one was, everyone lived through those scenarios, but I'm wondering if our city manager can talk about the safety or our 2 departments that have been very closely involved with that, just briefly, high level. 3, I wanted to mention that the master plan survey is out, and I posted it on my Facebook, on my Instagram. It's on the city website. It's in a million places. But the one thing that I wanted to say is that kind of in the menu of options of things to check that are important to you, I was a little bit dismayed that childcare was not listed as one. I had really hoped that that group that we had put together, that I was a part of putting together, would have got the memo that for the last 5 years I've been saying, and others have been saying, we want that in the master plan survey. So I'm asking the public to please put that in other as important. I do believe it is not just an issue that is important to me. It is important to thousands of people here in the city of Marquette. And until that is memorialized in writing in our planning documents, we cannot spend time or money on that issue. So as my birthday wish, I'm hoping everyone will log on and put childcare in the other category. Thank you. And then lastly, I just wanted to, again, wish Commissioner Bonzo well, him and his wife in their new ventures. We'll certainly miss you and wish nothing but the best for you. Thank you for your service.
All right. Typically, I don't usually talk too much during commissioner comment, but I have a lot of bullet points here that I'll try to quickly go through. I do want to thank Commissioner Stonehouse for attending that event with the 107th. I got a call probably about an hour before the ceremony started asking if I was going, and I was heading to drill for the National Guard on the other side of the UP. So I appreciate you going, and it was kind of neat for you to be able to see some old friends there. As far as one thing I have for Suzanne, I may have to go back and rewatch the question specifically, but if I can get an update, I guess, on the ethics question. I couldn't even begin to try to remember specifically what that verbiage was, but at some point, if you could touch base with me on that. I do want to also take a moment to just really appreciate the level of work that staff put in for the block grant, as well for that 425 agreement. I don't think the public can ever truly understand or appreciate the amount of work these people put into getting something like that on an agenda. And it seems like we spent a few minutes on it in a meeting, but again, like just that one grant was over a year's worth of work. So just thank you. Happy birthday, Jenna. I also wanted to welcome Commissioner Otway to your first official full meeting now. Evan, I truly do wish you and Aubrey well, and again, thank you for the years you have given the city. And the last thing I was going to mention about the master plan, I'll just add to it, is this is really the first survey, but is in a way kind of the really important one because it's going to set the foundation for future surveys. There is an option on there to leave like your email where you can, be sent future surveys. I would highly recommend everyone do that. But with that, I'm going to be done for the night. Comments from our city manager.
I'm going to keep it pretty short and sweet here regarding Commissioner Bonzal's departure. It's been an honor and a pleasure to work with you. I've learned quite a bit from you, and I look forward to getting some of those fun emails with some ideas and suggestions. I'm hoping I can send some to you as well, and I really can't wait to find out and to watch what you do next. So good luck to you and best wishes. Moving on, the community office hours, so an opportunity for you to sit down with me for a cup of coffee in a casual setting is happening on February 11th from 10 to noon at Peter White Public Library. It's varies from whether there's a seat available at the table or not, but I really invite all residents, non-residents, just to come and visit. And a lot of times our commissioner or two will appear, and our department heads will also be there too, sometimes. What was the date of that? That is February 11th, which is a Wednesday. Oh my gosh, I'm sorry. January, thank you. I'm thinking of February already. Well, let's get through January first here. As fast as it is flying by. So January 11th, thank you, Wednesdays. And it's usually the second Wednesday of the month. So if you just want to put that on a standing meeting there. Just to kind of touch on the community master plan survey again, because it is so incredibly important. It is a 15-question survey, very short and sweet. It is the initial survey to kind of gather some data. A good chunk of the beginning of it is demographic information or requesting some of that. And then it moves into some of those more broad discussions. But this is one of many. And yes, it sets the tone for the next survey and next meeting. So it is very important that you do participate. And if there are some of those interests that are not included on there, please, there is a space for that, and I really encourage you to take that survey and include that information. And again, that link to that survey can be found in our PSA that has been issued on our city website as well, and on the dedicated webpage at marquettemasterplan.org, and that is open until January 25th. So please, you have time. And then also thank you for the support and the recognition on how much work does go into some of these projects, where you do get a little clip of it, of the action item, but there is quite a bit of work that city staff has done on getting this to this point in a lot of detail. And again, what you witnessed today was in multiple agenda items were really the partnerships that were formed and the collaboration that we are really taking advantage of and focusing on in order to get key things done. So I really appreciate that shout out, and staff really, I can tell, already appreciates that. So thank you. That's all.
All right. And with that, we are adjourned at, excuse me, what did I do wrong? Closed session. Thank you.
Ask for a motion.
Yes. Suzanne, please.
My understanding is that we are going to have a brief update at this regular session from the project team. And then following that discussion, then you can decide to make the motion to go into closed session to discuss the attorney-client privilege legal memorandum.
Thank you. Okay.
Your Honor, we could request the background to start.
All right. City Clerk. City Clerk, could you please provide us the background for what was item 9?
Thank you, Mayor. The project team of Richard Barron from Foley, Barron, Metzinger, and Yipe, Trimedia, and city staff will present an update on the environmental status of the former Cliffs Dow site. Fiscal effect, none. Recommendation, following the completion of the update, enter closed session pursuant to the Michigan Open Meetings Act, MCL 15.268, subsection 8H, to consider material exempt from discussion or disclosure by state or federal statute, which exemption includes the consideration of information or records subject to the attorney-client privilege pursuant to MCL 15.2431G. Alternatives as determined by the commission.
Thank you, City Clerk. Commissioners, do we have a motion on this item? Commissioner Hanley.
I move that following the completion of the update, we enter closed session pursuant to the Michigan Open Meetings Act, to MCL 15.2688H, to consider material exempt from the discussion or disclosure by federal states, or by state or federal statute, which exemption includes the consideration of information or records subject to the attorney-client privilege pursuant to MCL 15.2431G.
Thank you. And do we have a second on that motion? What?
Take your second first.
Commissioner Ottaway.
Second.
Thank you. City Attorney?
So my recommendation, now that you have a motion on the floor, is that you can take the update, have the discussion, but you will actually need to move to go into closed session when that time comes.
Okay, thank you. And I guess I'm just going to pass it over to you guys.
Yeah, but would we take the update in closed session?
Ryan, will you just spin that back to?
Okay.
One little button, that's all I want.
Things we recognize too.
And Richard, if any part of the update you think would be best suited in the closed session, we could, I'm assuming we can also do it, yeah. So just keep that in mind.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Richard Barron here from the law firm of Foley, Barron, Metzger, and Yipe. I don't know how Metzinger got in there, but anyway, I will be much briefer than I was in the work session. It's covering the same data, but in a more truncated manner. So this discussion involves the Cliffs Dow site, which the city acquired some years ago. As the commission already knows, it's a former industrial site. There is a lot of residual contamination that's present, and the city has been monitoring the site for a number of years in terms of monitoring the groundwater that is there. The site had been used by the city as a compost facility. Dennis Stackwitz can comment on that, but it's been used for various city purposes for materials and putting other items on the site, organic material, things like that. So it hasn't been completely unused, but it's not been the subject of any industrial development or any really ongoing commercial type operations. There's a timeline here that's in the city packet. This particular slide demonstrates just visually how during site operations there were actual discharges either along Holly Street there to the north or coming off the site in the middle of the site or towards the south, actual discharges to the lake. This was during a time before there were significant, if any, environmental regulations, so that we don't really have data about what would have gone into the environment from the site, actually from the site operations off-site, although we can properly assume that whatever they were doing on-site, if it got discharged off-site, it's probably the same stuff or very similar to it. The site's divided up into a couple of different areas. It's really the center portion of the site that we're talking about here, and this is just a before and after from when there were old buildings on the site and then in later years. But it's that center 46 acres that we're dealing with, and as I mentioned previously during the work session, there had been monitoring during that whole stretch of coastline there. And the city had done some monitoring before our office got involved, and that was many years ago, and then that had stopped. It was kind of a one-time or a two-time type of event, and then later on, Eagle said to the city, you need to go back out there and do some additional monitoring. So in terms of working with the scientists at Trimedia Environmental and Engineering and looking at that data, what started out as the whole coastline there during that 46 acres, or at least most of it, has now been able to be narrowed down. So we know that the more heavily impacted groundwater is much more in the center. Now, dealing with the Resource and Development Department at Eagle, formerly DEQ, and they looked at the data, we were able to use data to make an argument, a scientific argument and a legal argument to the state, saying there's no reason to spend city money on the north, way north or way on the south side, because we now really have honed in on where we have particular issues. Ryan, go ahead and talk about, if you would, the Lakeshore Boulevard realignment.
Yeah, so based on storm events and whatnot over time that we will touch on a bit later, the city chose to realign Lakeshore Boulevard. It moved it in 150 feet or so onshore. And that's pretty much that in a nutshell.
Okay. Regulatory framework we've talked about previously. The takeaway from that is that the state has certain requirements that apply to the city as the owner of the property to evaluate the environmental condition in terms of what's migrating off-site on the property. And that's been the cooperative basis that we've been working with Eagle with. And Eagle has been a very good partner with the city in terms of evaluating the data, giving feedback. It's been a collaborative process. The bottom line out of all that is the city, as owner of the property, does have obligations going forward monitoring what's coming off the property, and that's in fact what the city has been doing for a number of years. There's a deed restriction on the property that it was part of the transaction when the city purchased the property. They agreed to a deed restriction that said that the property can't be put to residential use unless then the DNR or DEQ, basically the state, approves that. And in a few minutes we'll talk about what that might involve, but it doesn't mean never. It just means there's just another step that has to be done before the property could be put back to residential use or could put to residential use. There's been a lot of response activities which have included groundwater monitoring, which has been the real driver here. There was some work that was done previously as part of the project team led by Dennis in terms of evaluating what was underground. The site is as an old industrial site, it's not as neat and clean in the sense of, you have a point source here and a point source there, you've got a pile here or a single underground tank or something like that. There was a ton of debris, literally more tons than just a ton of debris, left in place when they left the site, when the operators left the site. So as a result, there's a lot of diffuse contamination. What that means from the operational perspective is that it's more difficult to just go ahead and wave a magic wand or take out a little bit of dirt and call it good, because there's tar globules, tar as a process from the wood distillation program that they were doing there, as well as other activities that's all over the site in smaller quantities, but sufficient enough to be leaching to the groundwater. Plus, we don't know what was just let into the groundwater over the years. So it makes it a difficult site to get our arms around, and as such, difficulty translates into dollars when you're trying to do something on the site. So that makes it more problematic, which means from the perspective of trying to spend city money wisely, we want to look at what gets the city the best bang for the buck and how to get closer to and maybe eventually at regulatory closure without just digging up 46 acres, which would really break the bank. So as part of that investigation, there was the geophysical survey that was done. That's using above ground methods to try and evaluate what's below ground, and this yellow rectangle there highlights an area where the scientists thought that there was a preferential pathway, which could be an area that might speed the migration of material from up gradient to down gradient or down closer to the lake. And then as part of that work, there was what's called a limited source removal that was done, which was very specifically placed perpendicular trenches for test pits across the area that had been identified on the geophysical survey to determine, is there something there that's showing up as this anomaly? And in fact, when they did that investigation, they did find some tar conveyances, and there's a picture here which certainly made it into the newspaper, but this was part of a planned investigation. And then that led to a limited source removal of 845 tons of tar and tar-like materials and conveyances. The plus side for that is the more stuff that's left on site, the more stuff can leach to the groundwater. And so when it's really diffuse, it's exceptionally difficult to get your backhoe around it, get your arms around it, and move it away. But by doing the geophysical study and finding some specific area of higher concentration potentially, and then verifying that with field work, they were able to take out a lot of materials that could then have served as a continuing source to the groundwater. Ryan, would you like to add anything to that?
Nothing on that one, thank you.
Okay. So the big driver on the site is the groundwater surface water pathway. And what the state looks at is what's called the groundwater surface water interface. They are regulating this site based upon what might be migrating to a surface water body, which of course is Lake Superior being close there. The big question is really, where is contaminated groundwater entering the lake, and is it right where we think it is, or is it someplace else? And there's data that is a little bit confounding there, but we have monitored, we meaning Trimedia has monitored that for a number of years and narrowed down the areas of concern and looked at how the groundwater surface water interface compliance points can be established. Go ahead, Ryan.
So, yeah, as Rich said, that's really the regulatory driver for the site right now, is that there are GSI exceedances that have the potential to vent to a surface water body. So that's basically the current state of the site.
This graphic simply shows groundwater moving in one direction towards the surface water body, and then you've got contaminants that move along with it. The lake level, which does fluctuate, can play an impact on the groundwater speed, how quickly it's transporting through the area, how much residence time there is, how long groundwater sits there as it moves through. And so that is one of the issues here. A mixing zone is when the state allows you to look at a broader cross-section rather than just saying, okay, you've got one well right here and it's this level and you have to go do something. I wouldn't necessarily call it averaging, but they look at a bigger screen and they look at the amount of contaminants that might be migrating through that area, in a certain time frame, and they look at the toxicity of those. And as a result of all that, and there was a mixing zone determination, a calculation that was done by Trimedia, but then that goes to the state, and the state looks at it, and then they come back with criteria saying, okay, if you're below a certain level, we're going to change this from an unpermitted discharge to a permitted or allowable discharge, if you meet certain criteria. And we were very close to having this site fall within the mixing zone criteria, and then we had some bouncing around, and that's been one of the challenges with this site. While we've seen trends generally going downward over time, we do get some fluctuations, so we're still in the monitoring stage, and we haven't yet got to the success point of saying we can meet the state criteria. I've covered this already in terms of the mixing zone criteria. Ryan, please, if you would talk about this.
So Eagle, MDQ have done several offshore efforts that included some bathymetry survey to kind of gauge the lake bottom and map that, coupled with some geophysical work that was done to detect any kind of anomalies associated with constituents in groundwater or other subsurface features, and also numerous events that collect surface water, sediment, and pore water samples for laboratory analysis.
This is another slide where the state used conductivity as a way to determine where they were finding particular hits to get a better sense as to where groundwater might be migrating towards the lake. And these were sediment and pore water sampling. So the important distinction here is that they were not taking samples in the water column from the surface of the water down to the sediment per se. They did a little bit, but that wasn't their focus. Their focus was what we would consider to be underground, but in the bottom. They were going there and they were pulling the water out from among the pores, the spaces in the granules or the sediment that's down there, and determining what's there. That is probably generally thought to be less migratory. The cause of those exceedances is an open question right now. And this is just another slide showing what they did. And they've sampled in various locations off-site, but they don't have, these have been episodic sampling, every couple of years, as noted on those slides, but not within a monitor or any type of a device that's on the bottom of the lake to continually monitor or to evaluate that. Generally, we're seeing exceedances that are deeper, and Ryan, why don't you talk about that, please?
So in general, at what is the furthest down gradient compliance point that we currently have in place, we generally see impacts in the intermediate and in some cases the deep interval, and that's kind of based on the nature of the contaminants, the density of the different molecular structures of some of these constituents we're looking at. So that coupled with increased groundwater and lake elevation events that we 2017 we saw a pretty significant spike in contaminants, and also the storm events that I think in a few slides we kind of show that the damage that was inflicted to Lakeshore Boulevard from those storm events.
Thank you. So as part of this work, we had groundwater surface water interface or GSI monitoring wells that were inland a little bit. Later on, we moved them out to what I've been calling the last feet dry location. They're on city property, but they're off the former Cliff Dow site. And you'll see on the map there, they were pretty much as close as we could get to the lake to put them in, because we were trying to go as close to the lake as possible. And so those are the points that we're using at this point. We talked about deeper intervals, and just for the members of the public that might be watching on TV, there's nested wells. There's 3 wells that are together. measuring a shallow depth of groundwater, an intermediate depth of groundwater, and then a deeper depth to groundwater, because depending on whether you've got barriers between the surface and the deeper ones, you could have different source material that came from different areas on the site, or discharges from the site, or, you know, or something that's deeper down that you don't know about. But anyway, and you also have different densities of materials too. Some materials, something like gasoline's a floater or a light non-aqueous phase liquid. Other things are sinkers or dense non-aqueous phase liquids. And then depending on how they behave, they can dissolve at different rates and things like that. So as a result, there's these nested wells to determine what we can find at various depths. Storm events have played a big role. That's led to some city, you know, moving the Lakeshore Boulevard inland a bit, and also some permitting that's in progress, and as a result is going into a contested case process right now to try and do something to protect the site. And this is particularly important because we don't want to do anything that gets the lake any closer to the site than it already is. We can't move the site, we can't move the lake, but we could move the lake if we were to dig inward, and we don't want to do that because we don't want to do anything that makes that groundwater surface water interface any closer to the site than it might actually be. And if we dug inland 500 feet, then you're just that much closer to the site, which could create problems. So the discussion, this leads a little bit to the team that's being led by Dennis Stakowitz relative to the permitting, but putting in a different revetment, you know, living revetment to try and do more to protect the site and provide better access to the lake as well. This is a graphic description here on the right-hand side where you can see the revised Lakeshore Boulevard on the left, and then there were some concepts there with a possible beach on the north side, as well as you know, various green space there, and that's undergone a number of iterations by the design team that's doing the marine engineering. Dennis, master plan, would you discuss that, please?
Yeah, just very briefly, that there's no secret to the community that this site has been extensively promoted to the community as a future redevelopment site. So we've, you know, gone through community meetings, master plan process, future land use map to identify potential future uses for the site.
Thank you. So property transfer is always a big question. We've discussed on other occasions that someone could come in, and a developer, for instance, could come in and buy this property, do their environmental assessment, do a baseline environmental assessment after that, because we already know there's contamination that's at that site. And then as long as they follow their due care obligations that are set forth, you know, under state statute and law, they would then not be required to clean up the site. So they could come in, they would have certain obligations, and this is really the critical point here. They would have what are called due care obligations. They can't make it worse. They'd have to let the state on the site for monitoring. If there was some remediation that needed to be done, they would have to cooperate with that. But there's some relatively simple engineering ways to use that site for all kinds of different purposes. And as I've mentioned before, you're not going to be putting basements there that close to the lake. You're going to have slab on grade construction. You would then do a vapor barrier, probably as a presumptive remedy, where there would be a geomembrane that would go, I'm going to go forward and then I'm going to go back here. There would be a geomembrane, you know, a heavy duty impermeable material that would go below, you know, where you pour your foundation to prevent the possibility of any vapors from coming back up into the building. And, you know, for the purposes of the record here, the issue in part is there a pathway to exposure that's complete? So for instance, when we talk about groundwater contamination, the groundwater contamination pathway to someone ingesting it is only complete if they're going to drink the groundwater. Well, no one needs to drink the groundwater there. In other words, you don't need to put in a private well because you're on city water. So you could have contamination in the groundwater, and if there's no way to be exposed to it and you're not drinking with it, that pathway for exposure is not complete, so you've eliminated that risk. Same thing with the vapor intrusion pathway. If you put a barrier down there or a subslab depressurization system, you make it so that anything that might be migrating up in vapors doesn't get into the breathing zone, so that pathway isn't complete. And going back a slide, there's certainly been a number of brownfield developments in the city, and I know the commission and residents of the city are well familiar with those. Right, anything to add on the brownfield part?
Not on brownfields.
Okay. So the open issues right now, reviewing the MDEQ, or EAGLE rather, data on offshore. What does that mean to the city? The scientists are still evaluating that data. There's some some inconsistencies perhaps with the data relative to the onshore data that we've been collecting. There's some data gaps that are there, and those are some of the other items that might lead to future city commission decisions and recommendations. Do you want to add anything briefly on that? Okay. There, that's a new land speed record.
Thank you. So I believe, if I understand Commissioner Hanley's motion correctly, the intent was for us to go into a closed session. If you could either amend it or withdraw it and make the motion again, specifically just saying that.
It would be cleaner now that I assume we're at that point, because there's a pending motion, if that motion was either withdrawn or amended to go into closed session now. Because the motion that you made was a little bit awkward because it anticipated that an update would be given, and it'd just be cleaner if we could just have you go into closed session.
Commissioner Hanley?
I'd like to withdraw my motion.
Okay, thank you. Do we have a motion, Commissioner Ottaway?
Thank you. I move that we move to closed session so we can consider information subject to attorney-client privilege.
Thank you. And do we have a second on that? Commissioner Smith?
Second.
Thank you. Do we need a vote for that? All those in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
Yes. All those opposed? Okay. Motion passed 7-0. We are now moving to a closed session. Okay, and meeting adjourned at 8:45 PM.